First of all, let me humble myself because I know there are a lot of you who've done the impossible. You being solo and actually completing a game. I'm just trying to get like you. I mean, even if you have an entire team of developers, small or large, by your side, from what I've studied about game dev and my personal experiences, it's very difficult to see a project to its completion because problems can range from you having a dispute about a game with a coworker, from you not being able to reach the budget requirements for your game's vision. There's so many ways to fail, which is why finishing would be one of the greatest achievements ever. So in this video, I want to tell you a story about my journey from the beginning to where I am now. So I'm a gamer, right? Also a YouTuber, and that's what I'd spend most of my time doing aside from work and time with the family. But one day a friend and a fellow YouTuber approached me and asked what I wanted to ultimately do in my life. And so he suggested game development. Initially, I wasn't interested in it because I just enjoyed playing video games. But as he'd tell me more and more about game dev, it pulled me in. And from there, my journey began. Well, our journey, because he and I started together. We worked together for a few months. Then after a while, I decided that at least for my first project, I want to complete on my own. A personal goal I've set for myself that I love to reach. And I wanted to talk to you about this because for one, this is a lonely road, and being able to express this with you is really therapeutic. The feedback I get from my subs is priceless, so I'll continue. With the little bit of knowledge I gained so far, I thought, where do I go next? Yep, you guessed it. The ultimate guide for almost anything you want to learn. And I stumbled across some tutorials, but I didn't want to get into that right away. I wanted to get an understanding of what it's like to be a game developer. There's a YouTuber / game dev who goes by the name of Relic Games. He's currently working on a project called Blood and Mead, a side scroller with very satisfying sound effects, nice gameplay, and a beautiful world to explore. Anyway, it's currently on Steam and available to Wishlist. The link for that is in the description if you want to check him out. But this guy has some very thought-provoking content in regards to what it really means to be a game developer. The first video I seen of his was titled The Great Game Dev Delusion. Some nice ambient tunes in the background while he discusses the reality of this industry, how saturated the Steam environment is. I mean, just the raw truth. This alone will make you think twice about getting into game dev. But that's what I needed to hear, and so I believe this is when my journey really began, because I literally internalized what it took, at least from a spectator's perspective. And the first stage I went through after this was preparation. What kind of game I wanted it to be, how I wanted it to play. And it's amazing now that I'm saying this based on where I am now versus where I was. I knew nothing. I mean, nothing. Complete beginner. But what I did know is everything I wanted the game to be. I think that's another problem that people face when on the verge of quitting, not knowing what their game actually is. This, at the very least, needs to be established for the most part. There are so many games that I'm inspired by that drive my project's vision forward. And I'll incorporate some of those concepts, but with a style of my own as well. Because from my experience, what I've noticed when looking at a lot of indie games, I see very little originality, no disrespect. So many carbon copies of what's out there, and that genuinely turns my interest level down. Knowing what you want and originality are two key elements to success when starting out, in my opinion, because I'm about to state facts right now. You do not want to be worrying about what will happen next in your game while learning how to develop. It's so stressful that you don't have time to think about that. You'll get to a point in your project wondering if it's even worth it or not, because you're stuck on something you can't figure out, and you don't even know the underlying plot of your game. With a clear vision of what your game actually is, you can look at it as motivation to keep going when you're stuck learning to develop. And this is something I have personally experienced. It was very liberating, actually. And I know that looking at game dev from an outside perspective, especially when you're passionate about it and want to get started, this can have you in a state of recklessness. I remember when in the beginning, everything I did was exciting, and my time was limited due to being at work and hanging out with the family. It bothered me being at work when I could be living my dream. I had thoughts of quitting my job despite it being a great one with awesome benefits. My passion superseded reality. But let me tell you something, okay? And this is gonna save you a lot of trouble down the road if you're thinking like I was. My brother, who's a very successful filmmaker and was in the same position I was before, but without having a job, told me, Hey man, I wish I had a job when I was in that position. You don't want to be doing this broke. Use your job to invest in yourself. At that point, everything clicked. Like a light bulb went off in my head. So I stopped thinking delusional and taking my job for granted, but instead used it as an opportunity to make my project the best it can be. Now, saying something like did the impossible is a bold statement to make, but check this out. I've written a story, created the concept art, brought them to life in 3D with Blender and Reallusion, and I'm currently using code to create the logic needed for literally everything that happens in my game. I mean, the Unreal Engine is absolutely amazing, especially UE5. It's amazing in how it synergistically connects everything together once it's programmed correctly. But the journey thus far has been like nothing else I've experienced, and even though it's also the most difficult, I wouldn't change a thing. And you know, I like to refer back to Lost Relic Games, and in that video he did, The Great Game Dev Delusion, when he said something that really stuck with me. And I was afraid of this. He said, people think they'll come into this industry with a whole plan mapped out and a mindset of guaranteed success, making a lot of money. He said these people have no idea, because it's not like that. You'd be lucky to even get discovered in the grand scheme of it all. You're taking a huge risk. You could spend up to 2 years, maybe 3 or more, developing a project, pouring money into it with the promise of almost nothing in return. Of course, you always must think positive and believe you'll be successful, but you always need to realize that it may not happen the way you envisioned it to be. I thought I'd be worried too much about whether or not I'd make money and not focus on enjoying the process, seeing it to its completion, doing the best I can. Otherwise, I've wasted my time. And I'm happy to say that for me, it's the experience that drives me above all else. And I'm so glad that's the case, because the only way I'd be able to figure it out is going through the experience, actually feeling it, and really being honest with myself to see if that's what I truly believe. So my advice is to use the time you have at your job or any other place that's taking your time away from game dev to theory craft ideas about what you want your project to be. Then while at home, you have more time to develop and learn. Cultivate patience and understanding about what's really going on. Then your perspective eventually becomes clear. This will be the deciding factor in all of it. And I know game dev is hard. That's also an understatement. It is extremely hard though, and frustrating. It'll make you want to quit, real talk. But if you can get through that phase of frustration, I mean, there'll always be that, but as you grow, you'll be better equipped to handle it. That's what I mean by getting past that phase. And if you can, then game development will become to you one of the most satisfying journeys you will ever undertake. Fulfilling and liberating too. But it's a process. And I think that if you're interested in it, you should take that first step into it. In this video, I know you've been seeing in the background the progression of Identity Rebels, my project. I'm sure you see how it's gotten better over time. I'm not finished yet, but I can definitely imagine completing this game, and I can't wait. If you want more information about this game, you can subscribe to my channel. I have devlogs, gameplay highlights, and videos like this one you're listening to. Also, join the official Discord for updates on the game's progress. The link for that is in the description. And just to join an awesome community of like-minded individuals. Lastly, Identity Rebels will soon be on Steam to Wishlist. I'm working on that now. I appreciate you watching the video to the end and hope to see you all at the finish line. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.